following program is classified G. It's suitable for all ages.
A very good evening and thank you for joining us on Business Best tonight, and this is a platform where we showcase the best in the business, and we will be introducing to you people who have excelled in their particular field in order to showcase their latest developments in their respective industry. Now today on the show we'll be discussing on a cafe, but when I say cafe, what comes into your mind? Just going and chilling, having a coffee perhaps. But this cafe is completely different. It's a cafe that serves you emotional intelligence. So with that, I would like to invite Azeem Saheer, who is a human capital specialist and also the founder of the EI Cafe. Azeem, thank you very much for joining with us on the show today.
Thank you very much, Shonali. It's a great pleasure and honor to have in the show, taking part in your show as well.
All right, so now I think I gave a very vague description to what your EI Cafe is. Why don't you give an elaborate description of what it is?
All right, so the name, as you said, it's a cafe. Just want to give that very casual and pleasure, just having a cup of coffee in the cafe. So, but it's a different cafe, as you said. I'm one of the Sri Lanka's first certified emotional intelligence practitioners. When you go back 1 year back, almost last October, when we had the lockdowns coming in, I had the impression that the industry we were in was a bit of a hold because of the distancing and etc., where the virtual platform was not much accepted in the market. So I thought of, while idling, why I not help the Sri Lankan community to gain more knowledge on different aspects with related to emotional intelligence. So from there onwards, what I did was I invited all my connections from all over the world, the entrepreneurs, coaches, CEOs, to come on to the cafe. It's a podcast, which is they share their own knowledge on specific topics, which is freely available to everyone in our country, just on on a fingertip, in a podcast. So podcast is available on Google Podcast, Apple, Spotify, and even Amazon and Audible as well. So the main intention was to inspire people to live a meaningful life and pursue their passion, because we all have disturbed with this particular pandemic. With that line, I wanted to make sure that people get a direction, to get some help, to get some knowledge and skills towards their journey.
Right, Azeem. Now to get a little bit about yourself, your title goes as Human Capital Specialist.
Right.
What exactly does that mean?
Okay, so of course, interesting factor, because I started my career as a salesperson, selling furnitures, and ending up here and sitting in front of you as a coach, as a facilitator, and an EI practitioner. One of the most important element for any organization or an individual is the human ability to perform, or the behave to perform, right? So it's an asset. So asset means it's a capital. So what I do is I help people to upskill themselves. I search their inner feelings and understand what they can really do within their self if they really identify their potential. So that's why I put that human capital specialist. So I bring my coaching ability, facilitation, my podcast, even gamified learning to the element to make sure that they understand and they self-discover their potential to go towards their own journey.
Now you're here as a coach, but as you said, you started your career as a salesman like a few years back. What made you want to shift from corporate to being this today?
Right. Of course, yes. It has been almost 20 years since my first job, right? So the last 20 years has been an amazing journey. I've been in the Middle East for a couple of more than a decade, and the experience I have got, it has given me certain aspiration, which was in the back of the mind, that helping people is something you can really get satisfied. Now you are sitting in front of me, and helping people to rediscover how can certain people can give knowledge to certain people. So this was one of my aspirations, and I wanted to do that. So that's with those experiences, I have come here and sitting in front of you and sharing my experiences with that.
Coming back to your podcast, Azeem, what are some of the subjects that you mainly focus on in sharing with your clients?
All right. It's a very interesting and a very important question, Johnney. The reason being is that in every part, still, yes, of course, we are talking about digitalization, artificial intelligence, automation, but still there's a human touch in every industry, every work in this world. So when we talk about humans are enabled and embedded with emotions, because our emotions drives performance, right? So whatever the task what we do, even a cooking, a baking, or any of the element what you do, it's about the emotion. For example, let's say if you're cooking at home, and if you're not emotionally stable, emotionally connected, do you think your food will taste?
That's true. No.
It's a tough question. So what do I do in my podcast? Every topic what we take is boiled down to the emotional element, like self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management, where every element like leadership, collaboration, organizational culture, collaboration, communication. So those are the areas what we look at in the podcast. So I invite a specialist on this particular areas to come and discuss and share their tools and techniques where the listeners can really also practice in their life. And one of the important elements really want to share is, even I did interview a professor, doctor, one of the doctors from US universities who are into social emotional learning, where how do we give this education as part of emotional intelligence to the school students. So that's the variety I bring in terms of it.
Well, considering this current situation, with the pandemic and the past few years has been a roller coaster for people, to the country, to the economy, to the emotions of people. So considering that, what topics do you think is most useful for you to share with the people who are joining you?
Right. So what I feel is, if you take a look back 18-20 months, as you said, we have gone to a roller coaster which is still running. It's not stopping. And according to World Economic Forum, by 2030, there will be requirement of upskilling of 50% of the existing employees in organization. Upskilling. So why I say it is more important, can really valuable for people listening this, they don't need to pay for this. It's free of charge on their fingertips, right? Any topic you name it, managing stress, leadership. So they can listen and start upgrading themselves without paying a cent, upskilling to the challenges we are expecting in the future, because future it's very unstable and it's volatile. We don't know what's going to happen. Now we're talking about a new variant, or we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So skill ready is something I wanted to help people to understand, and you don't need to pay a cent for this, and it's free of charge. You can listen for the experts through their experience, their life journeys, and what are the tips they can take. So with this, definitely they can upskill their self to get ready for the future challenges which is ahead of us.
Right, Azeem. Now, you said you've collaborated with some international lecturers or participants as well to coach your clients who are joining your podcast. How did you create that contact, and how did you get these people to come on board with you? Right.
So it's a social media platform. So I'm very active on LinkedIn, and I have been a community, emotionally intelligent community, coaching community. So there's a global connection. I use these connection, and when I send a request for them, would you like to be on my podcast? These are the audience, this is the topic, and they very full-heartedly, they don't charge me at all. They just come, they spend their time, and they give the knowledge also. So it's about how you approach people. It's about network, what you build, because I always believe network is your net worth, right? So that can really transform. And people like, Ivan Meissner, those people who are spending their half an hour of time with us is something really amazing.
Okay, so now, what topic do you think gains the most demand right now? Are there people, or your clients, or the people who are joining your podcast, coming up to you and saying, we would prefer to be taught on this particular subject?
Yeah, so one of the key demand areas is for about mental well-being, managing stress, because stress has been one of the key words we have been listening for last 20 months, managing conflict, designing culture, leadership, because the reason being is what we have gone through is we have not experienced before. We are struggling a lot. For example, working from home or hybrid work, people have been working more than what they have decided to do or on the job description. They're working sometime late night, having meetings. So that has created a lot of disturb on their mindset, and work-life balance has been distracted. So these are the areas we are looking for, because when you're emotionally connected and being stable, it's really easy for you to be so resilient where you can really face any of the challenges. So these are the key demanding areas which we are focusing on, giving people some tools and technique to manage these areas.
Stress, as you said, is a very important subject,
Absolutely.
particularly in this time. Do you think the pandemic had to do something relating to this topic, stress? Do you think the pandemic had increased the stress levels in people these days?
Absolutely, yes. Fear factor, because fear can relate it to stress. Now I think we are much more open than what we were before, but still when you talk about the corporate arena, still there are organizations working from home, but now they are finding way, thinking of the well-being of their people to make sure that they can have a very psychological safety environment in the workplace. Stress has been one of the key factors for last 18 months, because people's performance, even Microsoft came up with a research, how hybrid work has impacted. They have seen the productivity has been high, but at the cost of human emotional burnout. So people are really struggling and draining down. I think this is the time I think people need to really understand to come up with these particular tools and techniques to really look after themselves before they go into the organized context. Even if you fly traveling in an airplane, in terms of emergency, they always say, wear the mask for yourself first, then help. So we need to look after ourselves, especially like stress, anxiety, emotional burnout, where your performance can be really connected with your work-life balance.
All right, Azeem, I think there's a lot more to be discussed, but before that, we'll go into a short commercial break. You're watching Business Best, and we are in discussion with Azeem Saheer. Welcome back to Business Best, and we are in discussion with Azeem Saheer, who is a human capital specialist and also the founder of EI Cafe. Azeem, I think in the first segment, our viewers got an idea about what your cafe is all about and what the pandemic, how the pandemic has affected the mindsets of people as well. Still, talking about the pandemic, has it affected your business per se in a particular way?
Right. Yes, it did had an impact on the first lockdown itself, because we have not experienced, we are the industry of people development, right? We were used to do in person physically. So when the social distancing comes, everything was on hold. And on that line, we were on the search of alternative way to do. That's where the virtual training intervention started picking up, and we went through a lot of researchers, and we did a lot of free sessions to people to really get used to these particular platforms. How can we deliver? So in that line, yes, early this year it has been a pretty good, because all the people start adapting to the Zoom and Microsoft, any other platforms, and getting adapted to the system. I think that's a very positive element. You say we were even the corporates were really moved to certain element, and so far it has changed the landscape of people development. That's what we say.
As you said, now people were mainly used to the in-person learning and interacting with their coaches or their teachers, but now when you're moved into online podcasts or workshops, what are some of the techniques that you use in order to keep them engaged and still keep it going and keep them alive? Yeah,
so engagement is one of the thing I really like to pick from your question. Yes, it is a challenging, because and sometimes a participant it's muted and the cameras are off. It's very difficult for us to
Yes,
look
you
at the
will
people.
not have an idea whether they are
Absolutely.
involved in the conversation
Because
or not.
I'm a very visual person. I like to see the faces of the people, because you see certain body languages. Because when we facilitate, we just don't facilitate. There is science behind it, where we look for the participation. The faces. They have a query face. They sometimes they are doubtful. We pick them and sometimes we ask questions. But in this case, it's a bit of a challenging, because we don't see their faces. So I'm a person who like to have fun a lot. I like to listen to music, and I always ask people like, what is the age category, what is the generation, the participant, because based on that I have a track of music I play with them. So people start talking to me, start listening to me. So that's one of the way of engagement. The another area is I use different techniques and platforms to people to really engage. And one of the important segment I want to share is gamified learning. So the world is changing, the generations are different, so we as facilitators have to understand how can really make learning more interesting. So gamified learning was very in demand for us in this year, because it's most of the virtual, and we run those game-based learning on a virtual platform. So it has created a different hype in the market.
And also, coming back to your people who are engaging with you right now, what are some of the benefits that you feel that they can gain by attending your podcast?
So when they subscribe to the podcast, now I'm completing my 50th episode, right? So there are 48 different, because first and the last one is done by me on the 50th, just to make sure that I have a small momentum running. So if you see, there are 48 different resources, different from different countries, from different industry. So they can pick and choose which they want to listen, which they think it's really important. Because if I say generally, okay, everybody should listen to managing stress, it's not fair enough, because everybody's interest is different. If they want to pursue their happiness, if they want to groom their leadership skills, communication skills, or getting to next level of the career, it all depends on their interest. And they have 48 varieties of episodes, and more to come in the future. They can subscribe and just press that play button and listen, just having a cup of coffee. That's what I say.
Again, what were some of the responses that you received? Do you think the maximum capacity have been reached for you to cater them? Like, is there a specific target market that you're focusing on? Is it just Sri Lankan, or are you going international?
All right. So thank you for asking for that question. It's really surprisingly, when I see my analytics on my dashboard, I see 60% of people are out of Sri Lanka. So I have people covering all the 5 continents, from this East Asia to Europe to Africa to Middle East. We have a 40% capacity of Sri Lankans who are listening. So I always have that belief that there is more I can give to the Sri Lankan community. There is a capacity that we can touch. I think the podcast platform is pretty new for the Sri Lankan market. Because we are very used to YouTube channels and other various platforms. So podcast is something I think people need to really explore, because it's not about my only podcast. There are many other various, like Tony Robbins, plenty of influencers like Jay Shetty. They have their own podcast where they can listen to that also. And here in Sri Lanka, most of the people pay to go for a training sent by the organization. So I always believe this is self-help. So you can pick and choose where the area you want to develop and start listening to that.
Do you think there's a specific reason why less Sri Lankans or locals are joining your podcast compared to the internationals?
I believe that the culture, what we have come across, is something is really need to look into it, because we are very much hospitality based, and we are very much into cultural element. We are very close. We want to see in person. Sometimes people don't feel that good enough to just plug a earphone and listen, but we listen to the music. But I think the culture content and the awareness, I think I should thank you for having me here to bring that awareness. That people can listen and learn and upskill themselves just from a podcast is something missing in Sri Lankan context.
And another thing that you told in the first segment was that you provide these podcasts for everyone to listen to free of charge.
Yes.
Do you think that this could be a reason as well? Because most of the people tend to take free items or free goods or services very rarely, seriously. They don't take it seriously. Do you think this could be a reason?
Tell you frankly, can be. The reason being, we are in the mentality that if we get something free, they think it's not good quality. We in a mindset of that. But until you experience it, you will never know what is the quality is about. And sharing a knowledge free of charge is something you need to really absorb. Because the reason being, the people who I interview on my podcast, if I give her a figure, like averagely they charge about $500 per hour. So they are giving their half an hour of time to help people to grow themselves is something they really need to value it. Yes, sometimes when we give free, people don't value a lot, but I would request them to come and explore and see how much of knowledge you gain for free of charge.
All right, Azeem, I think before we came into this program, we were having a little discussion prior as well, and you mentioned something about a new strategy that you come up with called the Lego Serious Play.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell our audience about what it is and what this new technique of coaching is?
Right. So everybody knows Lego, right? The small toys. So I was in the Middle East, very exposed to that. It's a methodology, training intervention methodology. So there's a science behind Lego as well. When we know Lego, we always like to play around, build something, start talking about it. What it does bring is something called fun element plus a development area. Because we have two parts of our brain, which right and the left. Left, what we do is more into logic and analytical part of it. When we to right brain, more into kinesthetic brain. So when we are small days, we like to have fun, we take a lot of risk, we play in the sun and rain, but we never worried about anything. So because that's the moment when you're having fun, your right brain start clicking. But in this particular element, what happens is when people start using this methodology or the small breaks, while they are having fun, they are understanding their own potential, what is coming out of your subconscious mind. Because there are sensors on our fingertips, which we start accessing, playing around those. It has a direct connection with your subconscious mind and the cortex and your hand. So your hand works as search engine for your subconscious mind and start picking those stories and processes, how you can transform your behaviors through a small piece of toys. Generally when someone sees from far away, they think we are just playing with toys, but it's more than that. We run a process. There's a behavior and change happening when you start playing, and the communication, because it all is about when you start building it and you need to share, so your communication start progressing as well. So this is a methodology we use very much in terms of leadership, collaboration, strategy building, team building, because you get to know people more than what you know.
All right, Azeem, I think we got a very good idea about what EI Cafe is all about, and unfortunately this is all the time we have on the show, and we'll have to end it from there. Again, thank you very much for taking the time to join us, and I wish you all the very best.
Thank you, Shanali. It has been a pleasure having you in the show as well.
And that was our episode on this week's Business Best. Join us again next week with another product or service that we will be bringing to you that would interest you. Just in case you couldn't watch us on air, you can always rewatch this program on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Derana English. Until then, stay safe and have a good night. I'm Suzanne Shinali.